Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight we begin with pollution. If you're in Delhi, do not step out. Just look out of the window. What you see is not smog, it is failure of successive governments and policy makers. Forget providing solutions, the Parliament of India could not even hold a scheduled discussion on the crisis. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is wrapping up his three-nation tour. India has struck a major trade deal with Oman, which makes 99% of exports duty-free. In the US, Donald Trump addressed the nation for 19 minutes, but it's not clear what he was trying to say. In Venezuela, as American military pressure mounts, the motive is becoming clearer. Of course, it's about the oil. In the Ukraine war, a new threat from Russian President Vladimir Putin. He says Moscow will take more land if diplomacy fails. Closer home, Bangladesh continues to provoke New Delhi, this time with calls for expelling the Indian envoy. Also in focus, why the Oscars have moved to YouTube, why India is opening its nuclear sector to private players, and what about the liability? Also, why pigeon feeding is under fire in Indian cities and the rise of made-in-India sneakers. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Thailand bombs a Cambodian casino hub. Thai fighter jets dropped 3 bombs in the area, which is a major crossing between the two nations. The Southeast Asian neighbors reignited their border feud this month. Tensions have been escalating despite Donald Trump's claim last week that the two countries had agreed to a new ceasefire. Israel strikes southern and eastern Lebanon. The Netanyahu government says it targeted Hezbollah's infrastructure, including a military compound. Israel has repeatedly violated the November 2024 ceasefire. These attacks come as the global committee monitoring the truce prepares to meet tomorrow. Nepal's ousted Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli re-elected as his party's leader. This puts Oli in charge of his party's preparation for the national election in March next year. In September, a youth-led uprising had toppled Oli's government. Sudan's paramilitary forces launched a major drone attack in the country's east. The strikes hit a key power station, causing widespread outage in several states. The rapid support forces have been accused of targeting civilian infrastructure in areas under the Sudanese army's control. And France denies that it is planning to cede sovereignty over 2 uninhabited islands in the Pacific. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen has accused the Macron government of seeking to give up the overseas territories. The volcanic islands are also claimed by Vanuatu. We begin tonight with a crisis that you cannot switch off. India's capital is breathing poison, not smog, not haze, it is poison. It is air that has failed every safety test, air that doctors say you should not breathe, yet more than 30 million people in and around Delhi have no choice but to breathe it. Look at the situation this morning. The city was completely blanketed by smog, low visibility, smokiness in the air, and a dense layer of haze. You can barely see anything in front of you. It looks apocalyptic. And the AQI, it was around 370 today. AQI is the air quality index. The ideal level is less than 100, but in Delhi, it was 370 today. In fact, 300 seems to be the new normal in Delhi. Only 3 days in November had average AQI below 300. Only 3 days in the entire month. The rest were above it. On some days, AQI also crossed 700 and 800. But in December, it's not just about the pollution, it's also the fog and the cold, and all of it combines to create this dense layer of smog. Take a look. So what's the government doing? Today, new pollution control measures kicked in. It's called GRAP 4. GRAP is the Graded Response Action Plan. Here's a list of things that are banned under these rules. Polluting non-city cars, they are banned. In India, emission standards go from BS1 to BS6. BS6 is the latest standard. If you have a non-BS6 car which is registered outside Delhi, you cannot visit the city. Say your car is registered in Noida or Gurugram, then you cannot visit or drive it to New Delhi. Unless, of course, it is a BS6 car. Now, secondly, your vehicle must have a pollution control certificate. If not, you won't be given fuel at the pump. Third, all vehicles carrying construction material are banned, so no lorries, no trucks, no light vehicles. 4, all construction is also banned. This includes highways, bridges, pipelines, all of it. You can't do it right now. 5, offices will work at 50% capacity, meaning half the staff will work on site, the rest will work from home. And 6, schools will run in hybrid mode. Even higher class students will be attending online classes. And frankly, this is all happening too late. The curbs on vehicles should have happened earlier. Studies say vehicles make up around 20% of pollution in Delhi, yet these curbs are coming in the middle of December. Yesterday, the Supreme Court of India grilled the Delhi government. They called the pollution curbs a total failure.
The short-term measures are only to provide temporary protection to children and elderly persons. These are purely interim policy decisions. At best, they can be viewed as an extension of vacations, as schools are anyway scheduled to remain closed for 10 to 15 days during the winter.
The court is right. This problem did not emerge overnight. What we are seeing is the result of decades of air pollution. So naturally, ad hoc solutions won't work. You need a long-term plan, because these measures are not sustainable. Just look at construction. Around 250,000 laborers will be affected by this ban. How long will you keep them out of work? Same with the car ban. Some 1.2 million vehicles will be affected by this move. How will those people commute to work? The fact is, a solution must be effective and sustainable. It cannot throw public life into a spiral. And the problem is not limited to Delhi. You can see it across cities in northern India. Look at the situation in Agra. This city is home to the iconic Taj Mahal. You can barely see the monument right now. Same in Lucknow. Yesterday, the city was supposed to host a cricket match, India versus South Africa. Once the players came in, the problem became obvious, or rather visible. A dense layer of smog covered the ground. You saw cricketers doing drills with N95 masks. So the authorities decided to call it off. Just imagine the shame. We are supposed to be an emerging world power, soon to be the third largest economy, yet we cannot guarantee clean air to our people. Our cities look like gas chambers, and our politicians just keep blaming each other. Today, the Indian Parliament was supposed to discuss this crisis, pollution. A debate was slated in the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of Parliament. But as expected, the House was adjourned early. No debate, no accountability. Our neighbors seem more interested in solving this problem. And I'm not kidding. The Chinese embassy is sharing tips with India. They're calling air pollution a shared problem. But there's a difference. China says they have improved their AQI, they've improved their air quality. They're planning to share their playbook with India. Of course, there is a political angle here. China wants to smear India and boost their profile. Having said that, you cannot deny the facts. China did improve their air quality. If they can do it, so can India. We need to turn pollution into a nationwide campaign, into a concerted long-term project, not some winter assignment to be forgotten. Prime Minister Modi has wrapped up his 3-day tour. He's visited 3 countries in 3 days. First Jordan, then Ethiopia, and then Oman. Prime Minister Modi reached Oman last evening. It was the final stop of his visit to West Asia and Africa. And the trip ended on a high. A major trade deal has been announced. Oman has awarded the Indian Prime Minister a top civilian honor. Tonight we'll bring you the key highlights. The biggest takeaway, of course, is the trade deal. It was announced just a few hours ago. It is called CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA. The pact was signed in the presence of Prime Minister Modi and Sultan Haytham, who is the Prime Minister of Oman. And this pact could not have come at a better time. The Indian leader's visit to Oman marked the 70th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries. So they used this opportunity to strengthen the relationship. And the deal is quite simple. Oman will lift tariffs on 99% of Indian exports. In exchange, India will cut tariffs on 95% of Omani imports. Remember, they have a significant trade relationship. Currently, Indian exports to Oman are worth $4 billion and Indian imports from Oman are worth $6.5 billion. This deal is expected to boost those numbers, but it goes beyond that. It also covers services, especially the mobility of workers. Several concessions are part of this trade deal. It will encourage the movement of people between the two countries. It's also about finding new opportunities. You see, this has been a challenging time for Indian exporters. American tariffs have hit businesses and a trade deal is nowhere in sight. So Oman offers Indian exporters an alternative. It's a key Gulf market, plus it's a strategic location. It opens an alternative route for business. In fact, Oman already has a trade deal with the United States. So this pact with India could give Indian goods an easier export path. It also opens doors to Africa. Prime Minister Modi called this deal a blueprint for the future.
Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement यानी सीपा हमारी पार्टनरशिप को 21st सेंचुरी में नया विश्वास, नई ऊर्जा से भर देगा। यह हमारे साझा भविष्य का ब्लूप्रिंट है। यह हमारे ट्रेड को नई गति देगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को नया भरोसा देगा और हर सेक्टर में अवसरों के नए द्वार खोलेगा।
The Indian Prime Minister was speaking at a business forum in Muscat, the Omani capital. This was attended by industry representatives from both countries. Modi invited Omani businesses to invest in India, and while this trade deal adds to India's appeal, it already had a head start in Oman, because Oman is also home to a large Indian community. Nearly 700,000 Indians live there. They make up almost 20% of Oman's population, 20% of the population. They have built strong people-to-people ties, and the Indian Prime Minister met them in Muscat.
Namaste. Ahlan wa sahlan. ये युवा जोश, आपकी एनर्जी, यहां का पूरा एटमॉस्फेयर चार्ज हो गया है।
He addressed Indian students and professionals. He praised their contribution to the bilateral relationship. He called them a symbol of harmony, a living example of coexistence and a bridge between the two nations. Prime Minister Modi said the diaspora is India's strength. Their presence boosts India's image abroad and it helps strengthen ties with the world. He also highlighted India's growth story.
कुछ दिन पहले ही इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ के आंकड़े आए हैं और आपको पता होगा भारत की ग्रोथ 8% से भी अधिक रही है और ये तब हुआ है जब पूरी दुनिया चुनौतियों से घिरी हुई है। दुनिया की बड़ी बड़ी इकोनॉमीज कुछ ही % ग्रोथ अचीव करने के लिए तरस गई है, तरस। लेकिन भारत लगातार हाई ग्रोथ के पथ पे चल रहा है। ये दिखाता है कि भारत का सामर्थ्य आज क्या है।
Now to the final takeaway. The Indian Prime Minister was awarded the Order of Oman. This is the top civilian honor of the Sultanate. It recognizes his role in building strong ties between India and Oman. The honour adds to a long list. Prime Minister Modi has now received more than 28 foreign awards, including the recent honour from Ethiopia, where he was given the Great Honour Nishan of Ethiopia, which is the country's highest civilian award. It was presented by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Again, it recognises Prime Minister Modi's role in shaping the partnership with Africa. He is also the first foreign leader to have received this honour. So all in all, it's been quite an eventful visit. 3 very different countries, but one theme. India is now looking beyond usual partners. It is doubling down on old friendships and deepening ties in West Asia and Africa.
Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. I've restored American strength, settled 8 wars in 10 months. Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs. My favorite word, tariffs.
It's the festive season in the United States. Christmas is just a week away. The trees are up, the lights are on, the country is in a holiday mood. And right in the middle of all of that, President Donald Trump decides to address the nation. Now, we've said this before. He loves being on air. He never shies away from a camera. He talks to any mic that's on. And yet this one was different. It was different because this was an address to the nation from the White House. So the country tuned in to listen to him. He spoke for 19 minutes. But by the end of it, America was left asking one question. What was this even about? What was Donald Trump trying to say? Now, we've tried to break it down into 5 parts. Number 1, this was less of a speech and more of a status update. As they say, it could have been an email. Presidential addresses to the nation are usually reserved for big moments like a war or a crisis or a major policy shift or a national tragedy, but this had none of it. It was basically a status update Trump style. It was aimed directly at his voters who are anxious about rising prices, about rent, about groceries. So this speech was not about policy. It was about justifying policy, you could say. It was about reassuring Americans and controlling the narrative.
We're putting America first, and we are making America great again. Very simple. We are making America great again. Tonight, after 11 months, our border is secure. Inflation is stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down. Our nation is strong. America is respected, and our country is back, stronger than ever before.
Point number 2, the whole speech was a blame game. Trump opened with a message that he's delivered before. He said even 11 months ago, he walked into chaos. He walked into a broken economy and broken borders, and he's been busy fixing it. But if things still seem expensive or unstable or uncertain, it's not on him. It's on Joe Biden, his predecessor. Over and over, the speech returned to the same theme.
Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country, which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans. This happened during a Democrat administration, and it's when we first began hearing the word affordability.
Well, but here's a problem with that argument. 11 months into office, Trump is still talking about how bad things were. He's not acknowledging how bad things still are for a lot of Americans. This holiday season is not very merry for a lot of them. Groceries, electricity, holiday gifts, everything is priced higher. In fact, let me show you a survey. It says nearly 50% Americans say it is harder than usual to afford gifts. 68% say that their economy is poor, but the US president remains oblivious.
The price of eggs is down 82% since March, and everything else is falling rapidly. And it's not done yet, but boy, are we making progress. Nobody can believe what's going on.
Point number 3, Trump spoke about 2 of his favorite topics, ending wars and tariffs. He spoke about ending 8 wars in 10 months.
I've restored American strength, settled 8 wars in 10 months, destroyed the Iran nuclear threat, and ended the war in Gaza, bringing for the first time in 3,000 years peace to the Middle East, and secured the release of the hostages, both living and dead. Here at home, we're bringing our economy back from the brink of ruin.
Here's what he did not mention. In a lot of those cases, the peace did not hold, the conflicts were reignited. And then he spoke about the tariffs. Apparently, it's his favorite word in the English language. Trump lauded his tariffs. He called them a success.
Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs. My favorite word, tariffs, which for many decades have been used successfully by other countries against us, but not anymore. Companies know that if they build in America, there are no tariffs, and that's why they're coming home to the USA in record numbers.
Point number 4, the economic boom is right around the corner. That is what Trump has claimed. At the heart of his speech was a promise that an economic boom is coming, the kind that the world has never seen. But don't hold your breath for it, because Trump doesn't say when it's coming.
We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. Soon we will host the World Cup and the Olympics, both of which I got. But most importantly, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. There could be no more fitting tribute to this epic milestone than to complete the comeback of America that began just 1 year ago.
Point 5, Trump claimed credit for restoring peace and reasserting American strength. Of course, a lot of what he said is exaggeration. That's a given with Donald Trump, but that's besides the point. What matters right now is the image that he's projecting, because he's looking at the long term, or more precisely, the third term. Reports say Trump discussed the idea with his former lawyer. He checked the constitutionality of the idea of a possible third term with him as president. It may or may not be legal. But what's important to note is that Trump is entertaining the idea. He's discussing it. So I come back to the question, what was this address to the nation, what was it really about? Trump knows America is unhappy. The people are worried about the economy. His own approval ratings are plunging. One poll says Trump's economic approval has hit a new low of 36%. Another poll says it's down to 31%. And this is the lowest for him as president across both of his terms. So this speech was not about Christmas or a crisis. It was about Donald Trump trying to control the narrative. He's trying to show that he inherited everything wrong, that he's trying to fix it, and that will take time. Meanwhile, his peacemaking efforts and his tariffs are doing well. That is the gist of his message. Do Americans agree? Well, that's a different story. It's always about oil, isn't it? You can study the complex motives, you can debate the geopolitical possibilities, but at the end of the day, it is always oil. That's the story in Venezuela. US President Donald Trump is ramping up the pressure. Yesterday, another Venezuelan boat was hit. As always, the US is calling it a drug boat. They say 4 narco-terrorists were killed. No evidence, no trial, just good old American justice. But all this narco talk could be a cover. A cover for what? For snatching Venezuela's resources. Because look at the trajectory. Trump began this operation by talking about drugs. He complained about narco-terrorists and gangs in Venezuela. But suddenly, oil has entered the picture.
Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country, many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs. Well, we're going to stop drug trafficking, and we've done a lot. There's nobody coming in on the water, that I can tell you. The water is like, there's nobody. There's no drugs coming in on the water. Getting land, oil rights, whatever we had, they took it away because we had a president that maybe wasn't watching. But they're not going to do that. We want it back.
You see the goalpost shift. First, Trump complained about migration, then he complained about drugs, and now he wants oil. His advisor, Stephen Miller, went a step ahead. Look at his statement, and I'm quoting, "American sweat, ingenuity and toil created the oil industry in Venezuela. Its tyrannical expropriation was the largest recorded theft of American wealth and property." 2 claims here. 1, that America created Venezuela's oil industry, and 2, that the oil industry is American property. Where is this claim coming from? Time for a quick history lesson. Venezuela has around 300 billion barrels of oil. Those are the proven crude reserves, and they are the biggest in the world. Western companies began drilling there in the early 1900s. Many of them got incentives from the government. This oil revenue enriched Venezuela. In the 1960s, they played a key role in setting up OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Basically, it's a cartel of oil-producing nations. Then things began to change in 1972. That's when Venezuela took over the assets of Western oil firms like Exxon, Shell, and Chevron. Venezuela combined them to create a state oil firm. And this was not sudden. This was a negotiated nationalization. But the second round was more contentious, and this one happened in 2007. Many Western firms demanded billions in compensation, and that is the root of Trump's complaint. He feels that US companies were kicked out unfairly, so now he wants payback. He wants Venezuela's oil wells and wealth. Just one problem, though. That is not how the world works. International law is very clear about natural resources. If it falls inside your borders, it belongs to you. That is the law. Maybe foreign firms invested in it, maybe foreign workers extracted it, none of it matters. The resource belongs to you. Can you claim compensation? Yes, you can. But that's not what Donald Trump is doing. He is surrounding Venezuela with warships. This week, he imposed a blockade on sanctioned oil tankers. There are 30 such tankers in the Caribbean. If they try to sail out of the region, the US will seize them. They've already seized one such tanker. But Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is defiant. He says the oil trade will continue.
Trade in and out will continue. Our oil and all our natural wealth that by the Constitution and Bolivar's legacy belongs, our wealth, our land, and our oil, to its only legitimate owner, which for centuries and centuries has been our sovereign people of Venezuela, the absolute owner of the land, subsoil and all its wealth.
The blockade will hurt Venezuela to some extent. Around 40% of their oil is sold using sanctioned tankers. Most of it goes to China, which does not care about American sanctions. Nonetheless, Maduro's oil revenue will reduce. Having said that, there is a saving grace too. Oil is a sensitive topic in Venezuela. It is seen as the country's national pride and symbol. By attacking that, Trump is uniting Venezuelans. Yesterday, hundreds of them held a rally in the capital, Caracas, and their message was this: Donald Trump is a thief.
De bajar a Bolívar de los pedestales, de bajar a Bolívar, de recordarlo solamente, porque todas las comunas.
Venezuela has a lot of diplomatic support. China has sided with them. Beijing is in fact accusing Trump of bullying, which is a bit rich coming from China, but in this case it sounds like a fair point. Meanwhile, Russia is calling for restraint. Brazil and Mexico are criticizing the United States. The thing is, these are all words of support. They cannot defend Venezuela against American firepower. So the ball is certainly in Trump's court. He has steadily ramped up the pressure on Venezuela, first with airstrikes, then with tanker seizures, and now a partial blockade. The question is, what does he do next? Does he hope the economic pressure will topple Maduro, or does he move in for a military intervention? Let's talk about the war in Ukraine. A high-stakes meeting is lined up this weekend. Top officials from the US and Russia will meet in Miami. But ahead of that, Vladimir Putin has fired the first shot. The Russian president has delivered a fiery speech. He says Russia will not back down. He mocked European leaders, calling them, and I'm quoting, little pigs. And he issued a warning. Putin said Russia could seize more Ukrainian territory if diplomacy fails. And Ukraine has responded. President Zelensky is urging Europe to act fast. He wants Brussels to seize Russian assets and to send more support to Ukraine. Now, this is a sharp turn in the conflict because just days ago, they were talking about a breakthrough. The US sounded hopeful. Trump officials believed that a deal was within reach. In fact, they're meeting a Ukrainian delegation in Washington tomorrow. But Putin's message tells a different story. There is no deal yet. Most likely, Washington knows that, because reports also say that the US is now preparing for a breakdown in talks. They're drawing up fresh sanctions just in case.
There's a new warning from Moscow, and it comes just days before a crucial meeting. The United States and Russia are expected to hold talks in Miami this weekend. Ukraine will be the top item on the agenda. But ahead of that, Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched a scathing attack. He's lashed out, not just at Kiev, but at Europe too. Putin called European leaders little pigs. Yes, that's the phrase he used at a public defense meeting in Moscow.
Тут же включились в эту работу прежние.
Everyone expected they would destroy Russia in a short period of time, tear it apart. The European young pigs immediately joined the efforts of the previous US administration seeking to profit from the collapse of our country, to reclaim what had been lost in previous historical periods, to take revenge. As it has become obvious to everyone, all these attempts and destructive plans against Russia have failed, completely failed.
Все эти попытки и все эти деструктивные планы в отношении России полностью провалились.
And he didn't stop there. Putin issued a fresh threat. He said, unless the West comes to the table, Russia will expand its military campaign. More Ukrainian territory could be seized.
Все полагали,
The words were sharp, and the timing was strategic. Putin made these remarks at Russia's annual defense ministry meeting. He said, Moscow is advancing on all fronts, and warned that if diplomacy fails, Russia will use force. He also attacked the West's role. Putin said, Europe is fueling tensions, that it is creating hysteria by warning of a possible Russian strike on NATO. He accused Western leaders of deliberately whipping up fear, and he claimed They want to destroy Russia. That's not all. Putin made it clear the Kremlin sees this war as far from over. He said, the goal remains the same, to reclaim what Russia calls historical lands. That includes Crimea, the Donbass, large parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia, and other occupied territories. Today, Russia controls nearly 19% of Ukraine. Moscow has already claimed these areas as Russian territory. Ukraine rejects this claim. So does most of the world. But Russia insists it will not back down. What about Ukraine? From Kyiv, President Zelensky has made an appeal. He urged Western allies to show that Russia's war will not succeed. He's also asked the European Union to use $250 billion in frozen Russian assets. That money could be used to fund Ukraine's war effort. Meanwhile, the United States is preparing more sanctions. Officials are looking at new options if Russia rejects peace talks. These could target Russian oil traders, shipping companies, and vessels in the so-called shadow fleet. Basically, any entity helping Moscow export oil in violation of sanctions. But the real test begins this weekend. American and Russian officials will meet in Miami. According to Politico, the talks will focus on Ukraine. No details have been released yet, and expectations are low. But the fact that a meeting is happening is itself notable. It comes amid rising tensions, Putin's fresh threats, and a stalled front in Ukraine. The big question is this: will these talks lead to a breakthrough, or is this just a pause before more escalation? The Russian president, as always, has left everyone guessing.
Let's turn to Bangladesh now, where violence is the name of the game. The interim regime is not even pretending to rule anymore. They're simply watching this chaos unfold. Their only priority, it seems, is to poke India, and it's leading to dangerous and fatal flashpoints. Consider what happened on Monday. An Indian fishing boat was hovering near the maritime border. Around 11 fishermen were on board. Suddenly, a Bangladeshi patrol boat slammed into them. All 11 fishermen were thrown into the sea. But here's the worst part, the more worrying part. The survivors say that one of them was speared to death before the collision. The victim's brother says the Bangladesh Navy killed him. Then today we had another incident. 2 Bangladeshi trawlers illegally entered Indian waters, so the Coast Guard sprung into action. They have detained 35 Bangladeshi fishermen. No spearing, only detention. All these flare-ups are happening in a larger context, the context of worsening Delhi-Dhaka ties. Yesterday, we told you about the troublemakers. One of them is the NCP, the National Citizen Party. Their leaders threatened to isolate India's 7 sisters, basically the 7 northeastern states. They said Bangladesh will isolate these states. Of course, the interim government in Dhaka did nothing. And how will they? Interim Chief Mohammad Yunus himself has the same ideology. He too has made similar remarks in the past. He did it a few months ago. So naturally, the NCP is emboldened. Yesterday, their leaders provoked India again. They're asking Dhaka to expel the Indian High Commissioner. Like we said yesterday, the interim regime is a lost cause. The only hope is the upcoming election. And there's news on that front as well. One of the key players in Bangladeshi politics is returning to Dhaka. It's BNP chief Tariq Rahman. BNP is the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. It is the largest remaining party in Bangladesh. Many expect them to win the upcoming elections. And if they do, if they win, Tariq Rahman could be the Prime Minister. He's been living in exile for 17 years, but he's set to return on the 25th of December. His party says they're planning a massive reception. Something never seen in Bangladesh's history. That's what they're planning. Tariq Rahman will have around 40 days to organize a campaign, but here's the bigger worry. Will the upcoming elections be free and fair? I ask because of the rising violence. Just look at the numbers from November. 279 murder cases, 1,700 cases of violence against women, 93 abductions, and around 1,200 thefts. Overall, more than 14,000 criminal cases have been filed this year, and this includes around 4,800 murders. Many of these are linked to what happened last year. These are basically revenge killings and hit jobs. Add to this a surging problem of illegal guns. Again, this traces back to last year. Radical groups looted multiple police stations in July 2024. They took away state guns and ammunition. More than 16 months later, the Yunus regime has not been able to recover all of them. And this is the result, a growing trend of gang and radical violence. Yesterday, a BNP leader was shot dead in the city of Pabna. In October, a pro-BNP businessman was targeted in Chittagong. All of this is spreading an atmosphere of fear that could influence the upcoming election. One BNP candidate has already withdrawn his nomination. He fears an attack if he contests. Is this the free and fair election that Mohammad Yunus promised? An election marred by guns and radicalism? Or maybe this is precisely what he wants. Chaos and instability brought Yunus to power. Perhaps he is hoping that it will keep him there. Our next story is about the Oscars. It is Hollywood's biggest award show. For decades, it aired on the television, especially in the United States, but now that model is changing. From 2029, the Oscars will stream live on YouTube. It will be free to watch around the world. Now, why is the Oscars making this shift? Because fewer people are watching TV. More viewers are turning to streaming platforms like YouTube and Netflix. So the Oscars wants to capitalize on that change. Here's a report.
Hollywood's biggest night is changing its screen. For decades, the Oscars meant one thing: a television set, a familiar channel, and a global audience watching together. That is about to change. Starting in 2029, the Oscars will stream live on YouTube. Free, worldwide, and exclusively. It marks the end of a 5-decade partnership with ABC, one of America's major broadcast television networks. And it signals a turning point for how Hollywood's most famous ceremony reaches its audience. So what exactly happened? The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has signed a multi-year deal with YouTube. The Academy is the organization behind the Oscars. It is made up of film professionals from around the world. The agreement runs from the 101st ceremony in 2029 through 2033. ABC will still air the Oscars until 2028. That year will also mark the show's 100th anniversary. After that, YouTube becomes the home of the Oscars. And it will not just be the ceremony, but also the red carpet, behind-the-scenes access, the nominations announcements, and nominees' luncheon, among others. This move did not come out of nowhere. Oscar ratings have fallen sharply over the years. In 1998, more than 57 million people watched in the US. By 2025, that number had dropped to 19.7 million. It is less than half of what the Oscars once commanded. So what exactly changed? The viewers did not disappear. They changed how they watch. Younger audiences now watch on phones, tablets, and smart TVs, and increasingly on streaming platforms like YouTube. According to Nielsen, YouTube accounts are nearly 13% of all television viewing. This is more than any other streaming platform. That reach mattered to the Academy. Declining ratings had reportedly made negotiations with ABC harder. ABC had been paying around $100 million a year, but advertising revenues were no longer keeping pace with costs. ABC was reportedly reluctant to pay more. YouTube offered something different: global reach, free access for viewers, and availability across devices with closed captioning and multiple language audio tracks. The platform will also help digitize the Academy's vast film archive. But what does this deal mean for YouTube? This move fits in with its broader strategy. It's no longer just for short videos. It already holds rights to National Football League or NFL Sunday Ticket, and streamed a live NFL game from Brazil this year. That match drew more than 18 million viewers. The Oscars now join that list, and the stakes are high. The Academy Awards are the most widely recognized honor in the world of films. They celebrate theatrical cinema, global storytelling, and careers built over decades. Winning an Oscar still changes lives. In 2029, that moment will no longer belong to broadcast television. It will play out on the world's biggest video platform.
India has taken a major step in its energy policy. The Lok Sabha, or the lower house of parliament, has passed a new bill. It opens the country's nuclear power sector to private companies, and it's a first of its kind move. You see, for years, India's nuclear power sector was a monopoly. This monopoly was created by law, called the Atomic Energy Act of 1962. This law gave the central government complete control over nuclear materials and nuclear power plants. Private companies were kept out, so were state governments. But now that's changing, thanks to a new bill, which is called the Shanti Bill. It will replace the 1962 law. This bill allows private companies to build nuclear power plants. They can build, own, operate, and even decommission nuclear power plants. These companies must be registered in India. Foreign companies cannot own plants directly, but they can partner with Indian firms and take minority stakes. And the government will still have strict oversight. But why do we need this? Why do we need private players in the nuclear energy space? Because of India's energy needs. India is the world's fastest growing major economy. Its demand for electricity is rising fast. Data centers are coming up, so India needs more energy. Today, coal generates the majority of India's electricity. Coal is cheap, but it's also a major polluter. India has committed to net zero emissions by 2070. Nuclear power can help us do that. It can help us reach net zero, because nuclear power runs day and night and it does not depend on weather like solar or wind power. But here is the challenge. Nuclear plants are expensive. They take years to build, and the government cannot do it alone. That is why private capital matters. India wants 100 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2047. Today, we have less than 10 gigawatts. Without private participation, that gap is hard to bridge, and that is why India is opening up the nuclear sector. But with this opening comes a major question. What happens if there is a nuclear accident? Who pays if there is an accident? To answer that, India had passed another law in 2010. It is called the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act. This law made the operator liable, meaning if there was a nuclear accident, the company running the plant had to pay compensation. In this case, the company was government-owned. But the 2010 law went a step further. It also gave the operator a right, the right to go after suppliers in case the accident was caused by defective equipment. And this clause was unusual. Most countries do not allow this. The liability mostly stops with the operator. The suppliers are generally protected. This is based on guidelines by the IAEA. IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency. It is a United Nations body. It sets global safety and liability norms. And under their guidelines, liability rests with the operator alone. In India, this was not the case. And that created problems. Foreign companies were worried because they could face unlimited claims. And without clear limits, insurance was hard to get. This is where the Shanti Bill makes a change. It removes supply liability from the law. Suppliers can still be sued, but only if a contract allows it. They cannot be sued automatically. The operator still remains liable, but that liability is capped. It is based on the size of the reactor at a maximum of around 3,000 crore rupees. If the damage exceeds that, the responsibility shifts to the government. And for this, the bill creates a nuclear liability fund to cover damages beyond the operator's limit. It is meant to ensure that victims are compensated. Now, of course, this has divided people. Supporters say this brings India in line with global practice. It reduces risk for investors, it makes insurance possible, and it unlocks private capital. But there are also critics who say that it could limit compensation, it could reduce accountability after a major accident. The government says safety rules remain strict, oversight stays with the state, and nuclear regulation will not be diluted. This is where we are at. The debate is far from over. But what is clear is this: India is making a big bet on nuclear power, and as the sector opens up, the balance between growth, safety, and accountability will be key. Our next story is about a daily sight in Indian cities: people feeding pigeons. For years, it has been seen as an act of kindness. For some, it is faith. For others, it is tradition. But this week, that practice came under fresh scrutiny. Karnataka has banned pigeon feeding in public places. The South Indian state says it poses health risks. Violators can face fines or even legal action. But this ban has also reopened a familiar debate between public health and tradition. Doctors warn about breathing problems, but many communities say tradition must be respected. So where should cities draw the line? Here's a report.
In many Indian cities, pigeons are part of the everyday landscape. They perch on balconies, circle public squares, and draw people carrying grain each morning. For generations, feeding pigeons has been seen as an act of kindness. For some, it is rooted in faith. For others, it is habit or tradition. It is a quiet ritual woven into urban life. But that familiar sight is now at the center of a growing debate. Across India, authorities are questioning whether pigeon feeding in crowded cities has become a public health risk. Doctors say the concern is not pigeons themselves, it is what happens in crowded places where many pigeons gather every day. Their droppings collect on balconies, windowsills, and public spaces. As this dries, it turns into fine dust. That dust mixes with the air people breathe. Doctors say this can irritate the lungs. It can cause coughing and wheezing, and make asthma worse. Prolonged exposure can cause breathing difficulties. Children, older people, and those with existing lung problems are most at risk. Doctors also warn that pigeon droppings can carry germs. Serious infections are rare, but repeated exposure increases the risk, especially in polluted cities. These concerns have pushed authorities to act. In the southern state of Karnataka, the shift is already official this week. In its capital, Bengaluru, pigeon feeding has been banned in public places. The state government says uncontrolled feeding has led to large bird congregations, excessive droppings, and rising health concerns. Feeding is now allowed only at designated locations. Violators can face warnings, fines, or legal action. Further west, the issue has turned more contentious. In Mumbai, civic authorities imposed a ban on public pigeon feeding in July. The matter reached the courts, which upheld the ban. But that decision sparked protests in August. Many protesters, especially from the Jain community, say feeding pigeons is a religious duty, and it is part of the city's heritage. Nearby cities like Pune and Thane have also imposed penalties for feeding pigeons in public spaces. In the national capital Delhi, the debate is still unfolding. Residents have petitioned authorities citing health risks, but no formal ban has been implemented so far. Experts say the issue is also about scale. India's pigeon population has reportedly risen sharply since 2000. Easy access to food has allowed flocks to grow beyond natural limits. This debate is not unique to India. Venice bans pigeon feeding in historic squares. Singapore imposes heavy fines for the practice. Cities like New York and London also regulate feeding zones. Back in India, critics of the ban urge caution. animal rights groups warn sudden restrictions could harm birds. Many communities say faith and tradition must be respected. Authorities say health risks cannot be ignored. Between these positions, cities are looking for a compromise. The debate over pigeons is no longer just about birds. It is about how crowded cities balance belief and public health.
For our last story, let me start with a number that might surprise you. India will spend nearly $6 billion on sneakers by 2030. $6 billion. In 2024 alone, Indians bought sneakers worth around $3.9 billion. By 2030, that number could rise to $6 billion. That's a growth rate of over 5% every single year. And here is the twist. For decades, almost all of that money went to foreign brands, the likes of Nike, Adidas and Puma. But today, there's a shift happening in the market. Indian homegrown sneaker brands are on the rise. So how did we get there? Why are Indian sneaker brands suddenly exploding? And why are Indians choosing homegrown versions or homegrown sneakers over international brands? Tonight, we'll break it down for you, starting with how we got here. For most of India's history, shoes were simple. Formal shoes for work, sports shoes for exercise, and sandals for everything else. Sneakers did not exist as a category of identity. But over the last 10 to 15 years, three things have changed. One, there's been urbanization. Two, a shifting work culture. And three, the effect of social media. Sneakers stopped being footwear, they became content. Streetwear went mainstream. By the early 2020s, sneakers made up nearly 1/4 of India's entire footwear market, and that's a massive chunk. So here's where things get interesting. A typical lifestyle sneaker from a global brand costs around 10,000 to 20,000 rupees, 10 to 20,000. Limited editions go much higher. For most Indians, that is not affordable. It's not a random impulse buy. So two parallel markets emerged. Market one consisted of expensive, high aspiration global brands. Market two included low price, low aspiration, unbranded shoes and counterfeits. In fact, first copy sneakers are priced at around 1,000 rupees. They still make up nearly 90% of the market, 90. So 1,000 rupee unbranded shoes and 10,000 rupee branded sneakers, that leaves a wide gap. And it's in this gap that Indian sneaker brands were born. They were priced between 3,000 to 8,000 rupees. They use better materials than local brands. They have Indian storytelling, and most importantly, they design for Indian reality. There are many brands in the fray right now. CHK, Comet, Gully Labs, Neiman's, Theli, Zayden, and many more brands. They all approach this differently, but their mission is the same: build high aspiration but attainable sneakers. Most of them are even manufactured completely in India, from the sketch to the sole. Everything is made in India. And here's the other thing. Many global sneakers are built for lives in Western countries, but homegrown brands are changing that. There is water and dust resistance for monsoons, breathability for heat, wider foot shapes, long hour comfort. Some brands even use special coatings for dirt. And then there's the storytelling. Indian brands use local scripts for shoes. Many derive inspiration from Indian culture. There are special festival drops for Diwali, Durga Puja or Onam. So Indian brands are doing a lot. And who is buying these shoes? Well, the audience is wider than you think. There is Gen Z, of course, that is chasing individuality. Millennials who want comfort. Women consumers who like the idea of customization, and many of the buyers are from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. For them, this is a piece of aspirational fashion. And investors understand that. Made in India sneaker brands have attracted significant funding in 2025, over $10 to $15 million across key players. So what's next? Brands are eyeing experience-led stores where you can go in and customize your sneakers. There's also the focus on sustainability. International collaborations are the talk of the town, but the ultimate goal is to go global, to export the Indian-made sneaker culture. Because for decades, India made shoes for the world. Now, India is finally putting its name on them. A photo shoot is risky business. A good click can help you farm a lot of aura, but a bad one, well, it could derail your online stature. Just ask US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He was recently clicked by Vanity Fair for an interview, but the picture did not turn out so well. It shows Rubio standing awkwardly in a corner. Many said it summed up his role in the Trump White House. Take a look. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Police and protesters clash in Belgium's Brussels at the farmers' protest escalates. Scuffles erupt in the Albanian parliament over corruption charges against the government, and dogs spread holiday cheer at a US hospital. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1865, America formally outlawed the practice of slavery. The move followed an years-long civil war in the country. It took 246 years for the US to ban this inhumane practice. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Heqe drejt fjalës të sot, Zoti Balliu përjashtohet nga seanca e ditës së sotme. Po të ulen deputetët pra, do t'i ikë dhe karta. Të ulen deputetët.
Any gift? Sure. Oh, Eden's like it.
I was born into privilege, but I sold myself as the voice of the poor. I led a revolution in the mountains and marched into Havana as a hero. I promised freedom, equality, dignity. What I built was a one-party state, I survived invasions, embargoes, and enemies, but my people survived shortages in silence. Some called me El Comandante. History calls me something else. A dictator. Who am I?